She waited for him through the war. That was the story everyone knew, the version people admired. What no one ever asked was what happened while she was waiting, and what came back with him when the war ended. If you believe that distance only tests loyalty, stay until the end of this story, because sometimes distance doesn't test love, it replaces it. When he left, it wasn't dramatic. No speeches, no tears at the airport, just a promise repeated quietly between two people who believed time was something you could pause. "I'll come back," he said. She believed him, and more importantly, she believed that coming back meant the same person leaving would return. The mission was in Africa, a long one, unclear timelines, limited contact, unstable conditions, the kind of place where days blur together and nights feel endless. At first, they spoke often, short messages, careful words. He told her about the heat, the dust, the silence that settled after gunfire faded. She told him about home, about routines, about how she was counting the days. They were still connected then, still anchored. But war doesn't just take people away from places, it disconnects them from the idea of continuity. Life stopped feeling linear. Weeks felt like months. Months collapsed into fragments. He began living in intervals, between patrols, between alarms, between moments when the future felt abstract. Fear became background noise, not sharp enough to panic, constant enough to change behavior. That's when the rules of normal life began to loosen, not deliberately, gradually. He met her through routine, not romance. She worked nearby, local, direct, practical. She didn't ask questions about his past or his future. She didn't ask where he came from or where he was going back to. She lived in the present, and the present was easier than memory. At first, their interactions were neutral, shared glances, brief conversations. But in places shaped by instability, proximity accelerates intimacy. They spoke because silence felt heavier. They stayed because loneliness didn't announce itself loudly, it settled. He never told himself it meant anything. That was the justification. This wasn't real life. This was a suspended version of it. A temporary space where decisions didn't echo forward. That's what he believed, and belief is powerful enough to override caution. Back home, she waited, not passively, actively. She organized her life around the idea of his return. She delayed plans. She declined opportunities. She explained his absence to people who asked. He's deployed, with pride, with faith. She built the future assuming nothing fundamental would change. That's the cruelty of waiting. You don't see transformation happening elsewhere. You only see stillness where you are. The war ended quietly. No single moment, no clear signal, just a gradual return to order. He came back thinner, more silent, different in ways that were hard to name. She noticed immediately, but she attributed it to trauma, to exhaustion, to things that could be healed with time. He didn't correct her. He didn't confess, because confession would have forced him to admit that something real had happened in a place he had decided wasn't. They tried to rebuild. At first, it almost worked. They shared meals, they laughed again. But something was misaligned. He was present, but distant, like someone who had learned to survive without expectation. She assumed it was war. She assumed time would fix it. She assumed the worst was behind them. Years passed. Life moved forward. Jobs changed. Responsibilities grew. The war became a story told in past tense. Something survived. Something endured. And she believed that survival meant fidelity. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that survival had left something behind, something that did not disappear when the uniform came off. The first sign she felt something was wrong wasn't jealousy, it was confusion, a detail that didn't align with the story she had lived in for years. She didn't feel threatened, she felt unsettled, because when something survives war, time, and silence, it doesn't disappear quietly. It waits. And somewhere far from where she had waited, a life had been created that would eventually make waiting irrelevant. Not immediately, not dramatically, but inevitably. The truth doesn't usually arrive as a revelation. It arrives as a discrepancy, a number that doesn't fit, a name that appears twice, a detail that shouldn't exist if the story you believe is complete. That's how it started for her. Not with fear, with irritation. She was organizing old documents one afternoon, the kind of task people postpone until time forces it. Folders from years ago, medical records, insurance forms, travel documentation. She didn't expect to find anything new. She was just trying to create order. That's what made it dangerous, because order exposes what chaos hides. The reference appeared in a form related to overseas service, a foreign administrative note, not unusual in its own right. What caught her attention was the repetition, the same location, the same reference number, and a surname she didn't recognize. At first, she assumed it was clerical. Mistakes happen, especially in systems that cross borders. She moved on. Then she saw it again. Different document, different year, same name, same location. The war years. Her chest tightened, not from pain, from clarity. She felt disbelief just at the moment, the opposite of feeling betrayed. She built the timeline. War, return, years of silence. And somewhere in that silence, something had continued. Not loudly, responsibly, almost carefully. That made it worse, because chaos can be dismissed, consistency cannot. She confronted him with the question framed as curiosity, not accusation. Why were you sending money overseas? He looked at the screen. She recognized it immediately. She saw it in his face. The recognition happened before the explanation. He took a breath. It was nothing, he said. Just helping someone. Helping. That word again. She heard it before, years ago, when he spoke about the war, about civilians, about necessity. She nodded, but something in her hardened. Helping doesn't last years. Helping doesn't repeat on schedule. Helping doesn't avoid discussion. That night she couldn't sleep, not because she was afraid of the answer, because she was afraid of the size of it. There was a version of this where the truth was simple, a mistake, a moment. There was another version where the truth had shape, duration, growth. She feared the second one, because duration implies permanence. She followed the thread further. One more document, one more search, and then she saw it. A birth registry, foreign, stamped, official. The surname matched. The father's details were incomplete, but the date aligned exactly with the final year of the war. Her body reacted before her mind did. Heat in her face, cold in her hands. She stared at the screen, and then she noticed the detail that ended denial. The child's description. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Her breath caught, because rarity creates probability, and probability was no longer on her side. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She sat very still. The mind protects itself before the heart gets involved. She read it again and again. Nothing changed. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't suspicion. This was documentation. A life, created during a time she had believed herself to be waiting alone. She closed the laptop. She stood up and walked into the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't recognize the woman looking back, not because she was broken, because something foundational had shifted. Waiting had always implied meaning.
Loyalty had always implied symmetry. Now she understood something she had never considered. Waiting does not prevent life from happening elsewhere. It only delays your discovery of it. She returned to the living room and sat down. He noticed immediately. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes," she said. And for the first time since the war, that was a lie. But unlike his, it would not last, because the truth was no longer abstract. It had a birth date, a place, and a face she could already imagine.
Once a truth becomes possible, it doesn't need proof to exist. It only needs space. And now, it had space inside her. She didn't confront him immediately, not because she lacked courage, because confrontation would end something she wasn't ready to let die yet. Hope. Hope that there was an explanation small enough to survive. Hope that the documents were incomplete, that the similarities were coincidence, that logic would rescue her from implication. She lived in that narrow space for days, functioning, speaking normally, watching him carefully, not suspiciously, attentively. She noticed things she had never noticed before. How his body stiffened when Africa appeared in the news. How he avoided certain names, certain places. How his silence had shape now, intentional, selective. Silence with boundaries. That was new. She asked questions slowly, indirect ones. Do you ever wonder about people you met there? Do you think war ends when soldiers come home? He answered cautiously, as if he sensed the ground was unstable. It stays with you, he said once, but you learn to live forward. Live forward. The phrase echoed, because something had been living forward without her knowledge for years. She needed confirmation, not accusation. Confirmation. So she did what people do when trust collapses quietly. She verified. She contacted an international registry, not officially, carefully. A neutral inquiry. No names, just dates and locations. The response took weeks. Weeks in which she existed in suspension, eating, sleeping, smiling, waiting again. Except this time, she was waiting for something to end. When the reply arrived, it was brief, clinical, unemotional. That was the cruelty of it. It didn't dramatize. It didn't soften. It simply acknowledged existence. Yes, a child had been registered in that region during that year. Yes, the paternal details matched the identifiers provided. Yes, the record was active. Active. That word ended hope. Active means alive. Active means present. Active means ongoing. She stared at the email until the words lost meaning. Then she read it again. Her hands didn't shake. Her heart didn't race. Shock doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives as numb clarity. She didn't cry. She didn't feel rage. She felt something colder. Recontextualization. Every year she had waited now existed alongside another timeline, a parallel life, one she had never been allowed to consider. The betrayal wasn't just the act, it was the continuation, the maintenance, the decision to let time carry the burden instead of truth. That night, she confronted him, but not directly. She placed the documents on the table, quietly, carefully. She didn't accuse. She didn't ask questions. She let the paper speak. He recognized them immediately. That was the moment she understood something essential. He had never forgotten. He had just hoped. Hoped it would never reach her. Hoped silence would outlive consequence. Hoped time would erase what it had merely hidden. He sat down slowly, as if gravity had increased. She watched his face change, not from denial to guilt, from calculation
to resignation. "I didn't know how to tell you," he said. That sentence confirmed everything. Because it wasn't "I didn't do it," it was "I didn't stop it." He explained, not defensively, logically. That's what hurt the most. He spoke of the war, of isolation, of fear, of not knowing if he would survive. He said it didn't feel like real life. He said it wasn't supposed to follow him home. He said the child wasn't planned. He said the mother never asked for anything. He said he sent money because it felt like responsibility without disruption. He said many things. None of them addressed the only question that mattered. "Why didn't you tell me?" She listened, because listening was what she had always done well. She listened as he described survival. She listened as he framed betrayal as context. She listened as he spoke about compartmentalization. And then she asked something quietly. "Did you ever think about what I was doing while you were surviving?" He didn't answer, because there was no answer that didn't collapse his narrative. She had been waiting, preserving, believing. She had made decisions based on a truth that never existed. He said something then that revealed everything. "I didn't want to lose you." That sentence sounded loving. It wasn't. It was protective of himself. Because telling her the truth earlier would have forced a choice, and he had chosen avoidance instead. Avoidance had given him years she could never get back. She stood up, not angrily, deliberately. She understood now that this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about asymmetry. He had lived 2 lives. She had lived 1, and hers had been built on absence. She told him she needed time. He nodded. He didn't reach for her. He knew the distance was no longer physical. It was structural, something broken at the foundation level. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She imagined the child, not abstractly, specifically. Blonde hair, blue eyes, features that made denial impossible. A life that existed because of choices made while she had been faithful. The war had ended for him years ago, but for her, it had just begun. Once a truth becomes a face, it stops being theoretical. That was what she understood next. Until then, the betrayal had lived in documents, dates, and explanations. Painful, yes, but still distant. Now it had weight. Now it breathed. Now it existed independently of his guilt or her forgiveness. The child was no longer an idea. The child was real. She didn't rush to make a decision. That surprised him. He expected anger, ultimatums, a dramatic break. Instead, she became quiet in a way he had never seen before. Not withdrawn, focused, as if her mind had shifted into a different register. She asked questions, not emotional ones, practical ones. How old is the child? Where does she live? Does she know about you? Each answer landed heavier than the last. The child was old enough to speak, old enough to ask questions, old enough to notice absence. The mother had not demanded anything. No threats, no pressure. That made it worse, because silence implies expectation without force. He told her he had never met the child. That part was true. He had seen photos, sent money, maintained distance. He told himself that distance was a form of protection for everyone. But distance doesn't erase responsibility. It only delays confrontation. She listened, and in listening she realized something that hadn't occurred to her before. This wasn't a secret that could be buried. This was a reality that would surface again, at school registrations, at medical emergencies, at adulthood. The child would grow. Questions would grow with her, and at some point, silence would fail. She imagined the future, not emotionally, logistically. Holidays, explanations, unexpected phone calls, a knock on the door years from now, a young woman standing there with his eyes. She realized something then that chilled her more than the betrayal itself. If she stayed, this wouldn't end. It would expand. She asked him a question that reframed everything. What happens when she asks who you are? He didn't answer immediately, because the answer revealed a truth he had avoided for years. He said finally, I would tell her. That was the moment she understood. Telling the child meant acknowledging the past. Acknowledging the past meant rewriting their marriage, their life, every memory. She would become the woman who stayed, the woman who accepted, the woman who shared her life with a ghost created by betrayal. She asked the next question quietly. And what happens when she asks who I am? That question had no answer, because she would be nothing. No role, no title, just collateral. The cruelty of the situation wasn't that he had cheated. It was that he created a permanent third presence, a life that could never be removed without cruelty. And cruelty was no longer abstract. It would have
A victim. She realized then that forgiveness wouldn't restore symmetry. Even if she forgave him, even if she stayed, the relationship would never return to two people. It would always include someone who had been born from her absence. That was the point of no return. He tried to reason. He said he would keep distance, that he would manage it quietly, that it wouldn't affect her. She looked at him as if seeing him clearly for the first time. You said the same thing about the war, she said. That ended the discussion, because it revealed the pattern: containment, silence, delay. Each one had failed. That night, she packed a small bag, not to leave permanently, not yet. To think. He watched without stopping her. He understood that nothing he said now would change the shape of what he had done. She paused at the door. She didn't accuse him. She didn't insult him. She said something far worse. I waited for you, she said. I believed that meant something. Then she left. Alone, he sat with the reality he had postponed for years. The child was no longer a problem he could manage. She was a future that would demand presence, and presence would destroy what little remained of his old life. He understood now that survival had not been free. It had simply postponed payment. She spent the night elsewhere. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She replayed years in her mind. Every sacrifice, every delay, every explanation she had accepted because she loved him. She realized something devastating. Her loyalty had been used as time. Time for another life to exist. Time for silence to grow roots. By morning, she knew one thing with certainty. There was no version of staying that didn't erase her, no version of forgiveness that didn't turn her into an accessory to her own betrayal. The war had ended years ago, but the consequences were just beginning. The decision didn't arrive as a moment of courage. It arrived as clarity. Clarity is quieter than courage. It doesn't announce itself. It settles. She woke up the next morning in a place that wasn't home and understood something she hadn't understood the night before. There was no version of this where she could stay without disappearing. Not immediately, not dramatically, gradually. She would shrink around a truth she didn't choose. She would make space for a life created while she waited.
She would become flexible in places where she had once been firm. And flexibility, she realized, is often just another name for erasure. When she returned, she didn't bring anger with her. She brought finality. He sensed it the moment she walked in, not from her expression, from her posture. People who are undecided lean forward. People who have decided stand still. She asked him to sit with her, not to argue, to listen. He did. He had learned to listen in war. He just hadn't learned to listen to consequences. "I've thought about every version of staying," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. That frightened him more than yelling ever could. She continued, "I tried to imagine forgiveness. I tried to imagine time fixing this." She paused, "And every time I disappeared." He opened his mouth. She raised her hand gently. "No," she said, "let me finish." She explained it without drama, that the child wasn't the problem, that the mother wasn't the problem. The problem was permanence, a permanent reminder that her loyalty had not been mirrored, a permanent third presence that would never allow their life to belong only to them again. She said something then that reframed everything. "You didn't just betray me," she said. "You created a future where I'm optional." He wanted to argue. He wanted to say that she mattered, that she had always mattered, but he understood the truth too late. Matter isn't something you declare, it's something your actions prove. He asked the question that had haunted him since the night she left. "Was there anything I can do?" She thought about it, long enough to be fair. "No," she said, and then she added, "There never was." That sentence was the final cut, because it wasn't punishment, it was diagnosis. She packed quietly, methodically. She didn't take everything, only what belonged to her future. She didn't want objects weighed down by explanations. He watched, knowing that stopping her would only confirm what she was leaving to escape. Before she closed the door, she turned to him. "I don't hate you," she said, "but I won't carry this." Then she left. The house changed immediately, not because it was empty, because it was resolved. Resolution removes tension. It leaves space for reckoning. He sat alone for hours, then days. He replayed the war in his mind, not the violence, the decisions, the moments he had told himself were temporary, the night he had believed nothing would follow him home. He realized something with painful precision. The war hadn't made him betray her. The war had given him permission. Permission to live without consequence. Permission he had accepted. The child became real in a way he could no longer avoid. Not abstract, not distant, real. He arranged a meeting, not immediately, not impulsively. He waited until the weight of responsibility outweighed the comfort of distance. The mother didn't accuse him. She didn't demand. She simply acknowledged reality. The child watched him carefully, curiously, without judgment. Children don't judge what they don't yet understand. That was the cruelty of it. Judgment would come later. He saw himself reflected in that child, not metaphorically, physically. The hair, the eyes, the proof he had tried to keep contained. The child asked a question that fractured him completely. Why weren't you here? There was no explanation that sounded like cowardice, so he told the truth. I was afraid, he said. The child nodded.
Acceptance without comprehension, that was worse than anger. Years passed. The woman he had married rebuilt her life elsewhere, quietly, without spectacle. She didn't rewrite the past, she simply stopped living inside it. That was her victory. He learned to live with the consequences of surviving without integrity. He learned that survival doesn't equal success. Sometimes it just means you're alive long enough to understand what you lost. He attended events alone. Holidays changed. Explanations became shorter. People stopped asking questions. Society is kind to men who survive. It is less curious about what they leave behind. One night, long after everything had settled into routine, he stood alone and finally understood the full shape of his mistake. He believed loyalty was something tested by distance. He believed waiting proved love. He believed survival excused everything. He was wrong. Loyalty is tested by opportunity. Waiting only matters if it's mutual. And survival means nothing if it destroys what was worth surviving for. The war ended years ago, for everyone else. For him, it ended the day he understood that some betrayals don't explode. They grow, quietly, patiently, until they have a name, a birth date, and consequences that refuse to disappear. He never blamed the child. He never blamed the mother. He blamed the moment he decided that silence was safer than truth, because silence had cost him everything that mattered. In the end, there was no villain, no hero, only choices and the long shadow they cast. The woman who waited stopped waiting. The child who was born kept growing. And the man who survived the war learned too late that coming home alive doesn't mean you come home clean.